Hello everyone, I'm Soma Mazumdar.
And I'm Orad Semsarzadeh, and welcome to Kanban Lab podcast. In each episode, we'll pick a common question and dive into a different aspect of Kanban, exploring its principles, practices, and applications, and answering that question.
Our goal in this podcast is to demystify Kanban and help listeners understand how it can benefit their teams and organizations through addressing the common misconceptions, clarifying concepts, and answering questions about Kanban.
Hey Soma, how are you?
Hey Aaron, I'm doing good. Sydney is sunny today. How's Melbourne?
It's cloudy here. Every time I talk to someone from Sydney, I feel like I need to move to Sydney.
Yes, you do. Well,
Oh.
I'm glad we are not talking about Sydney and Melbourne here today. Otherwise, that would be a different podcast topic.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so what have you heard recently about Kanban that you want to talk about?
Well, okay, this might be very common. You would have heard it so many times. So, recently a team came to me. The delivery manager wanted to try Kanban because they have too many meetings. And according to the delivery manager, they think that Kanban doesn't have any meeting.
Well, this is a great topic to discuss today, Soma. But before we talk about meetings in Kanban and how Kanban look at meetings, I think it's good to talk about why people not happy with the current meeting. Based on my experience, a lot of people don't see value in some meetings, and they just have to do it because frameworks said. Also, frameworks normally ignore the current meeting that organization have, and they ask them not to do them, or in addition to do those, then you need to do more meetings. And that's probably one of the source of dissatisfaction in this topic. So if we want to look at Kanban, I think in the first episode, we talk about one of the Kanban practices, make policies explicit. And today we can talk about another Kanban practice, implement feedback loop. Kanban defines feedback loop opportunity called cadence, and there are two types of cadence. One called meeting, which focus on delivery of the work and make sure that everyone has everything to progress their work, identified which works blocked and what we can do to unblock them. Another type of cadence called review, which develop a quantitative understanding of the system and help to improve predictability and optimize the system based on the historical data and reports. And maybe later today we can talk about some of the core cadences that we suggest to have. But basically, in Kanban, we suggest to have cadences on the regular basis. However, based on the context, you can run them more frequent or less frequent. If you already have some meeting in the companies, then you can use those meetings. You don't need to introduce new meetings. If needed, then we can have some more meeting and introduce more meeting. And also another thing that I try to do is when team reach to the level of maturity, then we can run those meeting more on demand. So basically when it's needed. So Kanban has the flexibility to introduce meeting as needed and adjust based on the context and based on the team or organization requirement. So we don't need to add more meetings just because framework said that.
Yeah, what you said makes sense. However, I think that we should go back to the basics with Kanban. That's the change management principle. Start
Mm.
where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, really important for people, for either it's like one person or it's a team or organization, that what they want to achieve out of any meeting. What is
Mm,
the purpose? So, what I usually start with is that, okay, if they want to get work in their backlog, that means they would need a planning or a replenishment. So yes, that's kind of like very basic, very natural. It's going back to the Kanban maturity model one, where like you are starting with the basic three cadences that it's
hmm.
in there, the replenishment, the review or retro, or and the daily Kanban meeting. That's like more like the standard.
Yeah.
But it's very important for anyone to understand that, okay, what's the purpose they are serving. Now, like for example, the stand up daily, it doesn't make sense because they are talking to each other, they are connected with each other, and they are on top of the work, because it's
Mm,
about managing the work, not managing people.
hmm.
So then having a daily Kanban meeting doesn't make sense. You can
Yeah.
have it like twice a
Less
week, thrice a
frequent.
week.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the replenishment, I like the on demand one, because and I've tried that out with few teams. However, I think when they started, they needed some kind of frequency just to get
Hmm.
into the mindset and discipline.
Yeah.
Once they got it, that like it's not like other framework where
Mm,
like they have to get into a formal meeting to understand what they will be working on. It's more like the backlog is well prioritized, you can pick things from there based on the priority.
yeah.
That's where it was more like a light bulb moment for them, where they understood that, okay, it's like less dependency on formal meetings and more dependency or more reliance on the people who are doing the knowledge work. So we are trusting the people to make the right judgment at the right time,
Hmm.
and not letting the meeting decide that, okay, what needs to happen.
Yeah. So
So
basically, you don't need to do it because just for the sake of doing it. You do it
exactly.
because there is a reason for that.
Yes, 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 of
Yeah.
course. And this is also, I would like to talk about the the misconception of people, where sometimes I have heard things around that, okay, Kanban is more like it's there is no discipline at all.
Hmm.
You can just do whatever you want, uh, because the time box is not there. At least that's what they think. So it just doesn't make sense for people to, how to say this, like they think that, okay, Kanban has no discipline, no time box, and people can just start work and they don't have to finish it on time. Does that make sense?
So Kanban definitely is not time boxed,
Yes.
but we have service level agreement. We have, some sort
Exactly.
of expectation because
Yes.
at the end of the day, you want to deliver the work to the customer when customer expect it, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah, so yeah, I'm not sure why people think, it's not structured. Again, Kanban can be structured as much as people needs
Mm.
to make it structured, huh? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
Uh, um, so yeah, you can, Kanban is flexible enough to help you what you need and solve a problem that you have right now, right?
Yes.
So it
Yes.
doesn't necessarily tells you what to do, how long to do it, how often do it.
Hmm.
However, there are some suggestions, but I think based on people's maturity and team's maturity, you can, make it more frequent, less frequent. As you
Hmm.
said, to start with, probably with a team who recently started working together, maybe we can, run some meeting on the same interval.
Yeah.
But after a while, when it become part of their routine and they get used to it, or it become part of their DNA, then you don't need to do it on the
Hmm.
same interval. You can do it on demand, right? So
Hmm.
whenever, oh, I have capacity, what can I do? Is there any
Yeah.
work available for me? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. I do have a question for you. So this is again a situation coming out of real life experience. I'm not gonna share from where
Mm-hmm.
it is coming. So there's this team who recently migrated, like they actually started practicing Kanban,
Mm-hmm.
but their backlog is getting decided from a quarterly planning cycle. So
Uh-huh.
this is something I'm trying to figure out with them. As you know, we all need to experiment and evolve. We don't know all the answers
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning. So how can we make it more smooth for them to generate a backlog and like practice Kanban? Because the expectation out of them from their stakeholder is that they will be estimating everything that gets into the 3 months backlog, and they
Uh-huh.
will letting them know. So it's basically like a quarterly planning, and they have to estimate before. So their question to me was that if they have to go through the painful process of spending so much time in estimation in planning,
Mm-hmm.
how does Kanban make sense?
And how accurate their estimations are historically.
Oh, never, never. So,
Mm.
so if you look at the data for the last, I would say, few years, I don't think that any quarter, whatever they have predicted, they could get through all.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, estimation is just not accurate at all.
So again, first I will say my opinion, and then we can dive into that with a little bit more detail.
Sure.
So if their estimation is not accurate,
Yeah.
right, and we have some data to prove it historically,
Mm.
then maybe we don't need to estimate, right? Because whatever you do, it's wrong, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why do we need to spend too much time to estimate the work, which
Mm.
will take, different time, sometimes less time, sometimes more time, and
Yeah.
most probably takes more. I had similar, or I've been in similar situation, and what
Yeah.
I've done was that I look at, how many works they deliver, right? So for example, let's say they deliver user story and they used to estimate it, right?
Mm.
I just completely ignore the estimation. I just look at the number of works they deliver in last,
Mm.
let's say 3 months. Okay, so
Yeah.
you want to plan for 3 months, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've done similar things, right?
Mm.
I look and say, all right, every 2 weeks, historically, you deliver 10 works, roughly,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Sometimes 12, sometimes 8,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
But the average was around 10. Okay. So for 10 weeks, if every 2 weeks you deliver 10, so I expect you deliver around, 10 times
Six.
6, yeah, whatever, 60. Okay.
60. Yeah.
So the expectation is around 60. And this is not something I tell you. This is
Mm.
something that you delivered before. This is something
Yes.
you've done before. So
Yeah.
every, I don't know, 10 weeks, you deliver 60 works, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less.
Mm. On an average, 60. Yeah.
Yeah, on an average. Uh, and then, as a hypothesis, I told them, let's don't estimate it
Mm.
and just break the work how you always, broke it,
Mm.
but don't estimate it. You can say, is this too big? And then if it's too big, then okay, if is that possible to break it or not? That kind of thing, in a kind of optimized size that makes sense for customer
Mm.
and business,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be fixed in like two
Exactly.
weeks, that kind
Yes.
of thing, right?
Yeah.
And let's say, okay, we have 60 works. We can plan for this 60 works for next 3 months and see, if my hypothesis works or not.
Mm.
The first quarter, the first 3 months, I didn't tell them. I just observed, just
Mm.
to have a little bit better understanding about my hypothesis and see if my hypothesis is actually proven or not, right? So
Mm.
the first quarter, I just look and say, okay, they estimated and they plan for around roughly 60 works as
Mm.
something that I expected. And then they deliver pretty much everything they planned, a little bit less, right?
Mm.
So in the next quarter, I told them, all right, this time I showed them first of all the result. This is
Mm.
what you delivered in last, 1.5 years. Every quarter you delivered that much. And last quarter, without even I told you, behind the scene, I was just observing. So these are the data. So for
Mm.
the next quarter, let's don't estimate. If you
Mm.
want to estimate, it's up to you. I'm not going to stop you to estimate it, but you don't have to. If you
Mm.
think it's too much waste of time, don't have to.
Mm.
And let's this time plan for around 60 works and see what happens. And they did it, and they deliver similar amount of work.
Mm.
And after that, we stop estimating. And
Yeah.
we just plan for around 50, 60 works. But,
Mm.
when someone added to the team, when someone leave the team, then, we need to adjust a little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
But based on my experience, it doesn't matter how much basically you plan, the
Mm.
outcome is relatively similar.
Similar. Yeah. Because so what you are have done, I have suggested a similar kind of thing. Understanding the lead time for different kind of work they had in their backlog in the last 3 months to 6 months. That's like two
Hmm.
quarters. And based on that, do a relative estimation. Like, because if they are expected to put a number or a t-shirt size on something, then it's better to do like, based on the data they have. So basically the lead time, and if it is similar kind of work, so it should take almost similar time.
Mm.
And based on, yeah, that's what they have done. And that's really good because it looks like we are on the same page with our experimentation. So I will see in 3 months what would be the result.
Yeah. In fact, I wrote a case study about this one. Maybe I'll share it with you and we can discuss with more details later. But
Yeah.
I pulled lots of data and put together that kind of thing. And it went quite interestingly well.
Mm,
Because one of the problem with estimation, I think it might be a little bit off topic
mm.
because we were supposed to talk about meetings, not
Meetings, yes.
estimation. So maybe we can talk about estimation in another episode. Let's back to
Yes.
the meeting.
Yeah.
But I do some simple analysis on the data,
Mm,
as I just explained. We just completely reduce the amount of planning meetings and planning time, that kind of thing, dramatically, right?
yeah.
So rather than spend days of planning and the plan is
Yes.
always
Yes.
wrong,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then we can spend those time on actually delivering the work,
Exactly.
right?
Yes. We have a
And
case
the outcome
study.
is similar. That
Yeah.
that's the thing.
We do have a case study in Kanban when someone takes the KMP, Kanban Management Professional, as
Mm,
very, very similar case studies in there as well. For anyone who is interested to know more, reach out. But getting back to our topic for the day,
mm-hmm,
meetings in Kanban, I was just thinking, or wouldn't
mm-hmm,
it make sense for us to, like at least talk about that? What are the basic meetings that people can start with for Kanban if they are just starting off as a team, and what should be the purpose? What do you think?
mm. Yeah, that sounds good. And before we talk about that, for the same team that they
Yeah.
used to do, Scrum, and then gradually we move toward more flow-based approach, Kanban. One of the positive feedback I received from people was, in fact, they said that we're not spending that much time on meetings,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, but back to your question, what is the basic meeting we can have with the team at least?
Mm.
Let's keep it simple, right? Let's assume we have one
Very
team.
simple. Yes.
So we probably need one meeting, ideally every day.
Mm.
Normally call it Kanban meeting. If you are, if you used to call it daily stand up or team sync or whatever you call it, just don't change the name, just
Yeah.
continue as is. In terms of the facilitation, I don't want to go into too much detail, but normally we focus on the work, not just individual. So rather than
Exactly.
round robin approach, we do walk the board approach. So I'm sure people
Mm,
can Google and
mm,
read a little bit more about it later. Um, but again, as you said, if they don't need to do it every day, yeah, they can do every other day or something like
mm.
that. But my experience, every day is good. And it's not gonna take more than 10-15 minutes. I think
Exactly.
that's fine.
Yeah. So one more thing there when we are on the daily Kanban meeting or stand up or daily sync check-in, whatever we are calling it, uh, walk the board is a very good thing, but also walk the board from right to left. I think that's really, really important. So right most column, which is nearing the finish column, like the done column, start from there. And the whole idea behind it is that because we need to like explain or everyone needs to understand the purpose of doing this session. It's not because checking on people or micromanaging people what they are doing, rather than trying to manage our work in the most beneficial or like efficient way. So when we start reading the work or reading the board from the rightmost column, like just after done, we will always visualize that what's nearing finish line, and we can always talk about if there is something that needs to happen there, if there is something that like anyone can do to like what you accelerate it. I was, yeah,
Mm,
sorry, I just forgot that word, accelerate. Yes. So yeah, that's the whole purpose of coming together as a team and doing a daily sync or check-in or a daily Kanban meeting.
yeah. So basically, the purpose of this daily meeting, Kanban meeting, is to make sure the card or the work, has no blocker and move to the right side of the board, right?
Yes,
So that's the
yes,
whole purpose. And when team work together, again, when they know each other, they have a trust and um, they know each other and they're familiar with the process and all that, then we can even simplify it and say, okay, is there any blocker? Is there
exactly.
anything that anyone needs to discuss? No, everything good. Okay, then go
Yeah.
home, whatever,
And this should be
finish.
the goal. And this is what I tell team, that this should be your goal as a team where you want to reach. But in order to achieve that, you have to always start from, like reading out the work on the board and asking
Mm,
that what's like, do you need anything? Is there any support required? Can anyone do anything? But
yeah,
your goal, the ultimate goal where you want to reach is that, okay, is there any blocker? Tell
that's right.
us. That's it. So I think it's always a good idea to have the goal in front of you so that, you can figure out the steps to reach there. So
Yeah.
cool. That's,
Just one thing before I forget, because I mentioned a few times we can run the meeting on demand. I
yes.
remember that in one of my Kanban courses, someone said, I don't like on-demand meeting because I like to be prepared
Mm,
for the meeting and I know when it's gonna happen. I don't like that people say, hey, let's do a meeting, right?
yeah.
And I just wanted to clarify when we say, or when I say on demand, it doesn't mean that let's do it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That means we need to talk about something. When will be the best time to get together and discuss about it? It
Yes.
can be the same day, it can be next couple of days, or it can be next week or something like that. So on demand doesn't necessarily means let's do it
Right.
right now. On
Yeah.
demand means do it when it's necessary.
Necessary. Good, you clarified that. That was good. Okay, moving on to the next one.
So yeah, one is just a Kanban meeting just to make
Mhm.
sure that everyone has everything right? And no one is blocked or no one uh, doesn't need to talk to anyone else and that kind of.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Another thing a lot of team is doing it is, they get together and look what needs to be done in the next few weeks, right? So what is the next priority?
Yeah.
And
So,
just kind of some sort of a, maybe like not sprint planning, we call it in Canva, we call it the replenishment, right? So which
yes.
means when we have capacity, okay, pull the work,
Yeah.
not necessarily, it's not necessary, but I think it's a good things to do to start with, to make sure that people and team have some good understanding about the future works.
Yeah.
And also make sure that we always have some work ready for them to start. So when they have capacity, all right, we know the priority, we know what will be the next work to start working. And the last one is how we can improve.
When we are, or let's finish off the replenishment,
Okay.
maybe. So, also one more thing that people need to understand, that when they are pulling the work in the replenishment or the planning meeting, the work is not getting into your work in progress column. It's rather getting into a ready or whatever you are calling it, which is more like a funnel for your team to choose the
Committed.
work.
So team
Yes.
committed to this work, or we committed to
Yes.
deliver this one, something
Yeah,
like that.
something like that, where you know that these are the priorities you need to look at the next time when you have capacity. So
Hmm.
it's getting into that column. So it's very important for people to understand, when you prioritize, when you pull work, all those decisions will be based on the policy that we spoke in the first episode, how
Hmm.
important team policies are. So it will be based on that. So that's why creating good policies for your team to start with is really important. So yes, like replenishment is important. You can either do it like once a week, and it doesn't have to be that long actually. And not everyone needs to be in there, because how you have created the policy, it kind of like signifies that, okay, what kind of decisions will be made in that session. So everyone from the team doesn't have to be there. That's the beauty of it.
Mm, I might be a little bit. I have different opinion about this one. I like to have more people from, especially with different skills, if it's possible, just to look
Yeah,
at the problem from different angle
of
and also
course. Yeah.
share their experiences.
Yeah.
Um, And another thing, it's based on my experience as a developer. It's always good for developer and technical people not to be surprised. So don't show them the work, you know, uh, just right before they start working. It's
Okay.
always
Yeah,
good to
that's
show the work to them. They have some idea about that. Ask question. Uh, if they don't know even how to start, because it's quite possible that business wants something,
mhm.
we have all the requirement and stuff like that, but developer and technical team don't really know where to start. They never work on this part of the application or product or something like that, right? That gives them a little bit, time to get their head around it. And also they might say, okay, we can't commit to this work because we're not ready, right? So we
Well,
need
that's
to
a
do something before we start. You know what I'm
now.
saying?
Yes, and I totally agree with that. I'm not disagreeing, but when I said that everyone doesn't have to be there, what I meant is that usually in teams, you will see that certain roles will be there just because, like they assume that they are higher in hierarchy. They are not actually doing the work. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have such roles, it's not necessary that every time they need to be in those sessions. They can like make that time free for themselves and do something else, and maybe the developers, the testers, like who will be doing the work, can go to this session to choose the work, what could be in their ready or committed column. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all about that. So when I said
Mm-hmm.
like everyone doesn't have to be there, you can definitely agree as a team which roles are necessary to go to the session, and you can rotate. You don't have to do the same thing again and again. You can experiment again. Like the favorite thing I can say about Kanban is that I experiment all the time and review the results. So just experiment with certain roles first, see what's the outcome, and then if that doesn't make sense or doesn't give you the same outcome you have expected, just change it, do something else. So yes, and but definitely I agree that developers need to be more nearer to the customer problem so that they can be more creative around it.
Yeah, this is my personal opinion. Doesn't do anything with Kanban.
Mm,
Uh, but to me, those who do the work needs to
yes,
accept the work.
Of course, and no
Um,
one can disagree with that, I believe.
oh, I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with
Well, I don't.
that.
Same page, and that's really important. So, okay. So moving on to the last one that we are saying that is a good start would be the review, which can be considered as a retro as well. However, there is just one difference that I would like to point out. Review is more data oriented. Like we do consider all the human side that we want to review as well. But then when we start with the data, like for example, when we talk about Kanban cadences, there are two parts to it. One is the meeting part, where you are making the decisions like planning what to pick, replenishment, what to pick in your queue, and daily stand up, like what's happening, what kind of decisions you are like, talking about. So you are talking about that in your meetings. But when it comes to the review part of the cadence, it's about reviewing all those decisions. So a review like the data could get into, like, for example, the policies that you have created for the team, are they working? Is the WIP limit right WIP limit that you have set for the team? The way you replenish your committed column or ready column or next to be done column, is that the right way to do it? So all those decisions should be reviewed in the review, and you should have some data for that. You should have some kind of like graph, chart, whatever metrics you are following for your team, to talk about it, so that everyone is looking at the data and trying to be on the same page around what kind of improvements you can think of or you can
Mm,
decide to take in the next one. And then of course do not forget the human part as well, because humans make a team. We need to be more
yeah.
human in those reviews. So yes, check in with each other, how they are doing. Is there anything else that you can do as a team or do things differently to
Hmm.
be more like a team? So yes,
Yeah.
that is important, but data is also very important.
Because
So
data doesn't lie, right?
exactly.
No, that's really good. So, but just to kind of wrap it up, what we discussed, some people they complain about they having too much meeting, and they say, okay, let's do Kanban because Kanban doesn't have meeting. What we discussed today was that Kanban has meeting, but Kanban is flexible enough to, have those meetings first of all based on your maturity and your problem and what you need. You can run the meeting as frequent as it's needed. And when you have more mature team, then you can have more on-demand meetings. So basically on the topic that it's needed and when it's needed. So three basic meeting that's suggested for a team with low maturity or team who just started working together. So one Kanban meeting normally happen every day, and I personally suggest to do it every day for 10 to 15 minutes and just talk about, does anyone need any help? Is there anything stuck anywhere? Can we help to make sure the card and works move to the right of the Kanban, right side of the Kanban? We also talk about the replenishment. So basically, team agreed and committed to the future works and have some sort of retrospective to look at your data, where the work stuck, where was the bottleneck, and where we can improve. Did I miss anything, Soma?
No, you did good.
All right.
Also, whoever will be listening to this podcast, they can also hear our conversation around the quarterly planning and how can you fit your Kanban in that. So do let us know, what do you think about it? If you have different ways of doing your meetings, please let us know.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. And yes, we can ban.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.